I'm David Neale. I'm CEO for Argá Medtech, a Swiss headquartered company with also labs in San Diego. We are specializing in developing technology for cardiac ablation, more specifically the use of pulsed field ablation, but with very unique and proprietary technology. We set ourselves up to treat atrial fibrillation. So we've developed an atrial fibrillation is the most common of cardiac arrhythmias, and it's also the second largest cause of stroke. More importantly is that the patients that suffer from it have a very diminished quality of life. So what we do is the traditional treatment is really by medication. When that doesn't work, you go into ablation, which is basically you're trying to fix the circuitry, the electrical circuitry in the heart, right, some way or another. However, the current technologies do not allow to succeed without having to do maybe 2 or 3 procedures. So we're developing new technology, new energy sources that are safer, and that would ensure a higher success rate. The standard of care for treatment of ablation today, cardiac ablation, is out there already for 40 years. It's called radiofrequency, and most in the last 15 years, cryoablation. These two forms of energy are thermal, and anything you have which is thermal heat does not discriminate the targeted area from the non-targeted, so the risk of collateral damage is quite significant, right? So what happens today is EPs have to be extra cautious when delivering the therapy, and many times they leave gaps in the sets of lesions that allow for the current to still pass, leading then to a redo procedure. This standard of care is now being challenged by pulsed field ablation, which we're one of the companies developing this, in which the mechanism of action is totally different. We create electrical fields that will somehow change the permeability of the membrane of the cardiomyocyte, leading the cell to die naturally. So it's not burnt, it's not frozen, it dies naturally, and then it's replaced by fibrotic tissue, which is what we want to interrupt the circuitry, right, of this errant electrical signal. The beauty of pulsed field ablation is it is also selective. Cardiomyocytes are among the most sensitive to electrical fields, so it gives me a big room to maneuver between delivering therapy and not affecting the vasculature, the nerves, or endothelium, or any other surrounding structure of the heart. So there are over 38 million people already diagnosed with AF, and the number increases every year. 1 to 2% of populations have AF or will develop AF over time, right? So if you have a system that you're constantly coming back for procedures, you're overloading the systems with repeat patients when these could have been new. But in reality, still, ablation as a treatment is not widespread. So maybe about 800,000 procedures, some say up to 1 million procedures take place a year, but you have 38 million people already with the indication for a procedure, right? So it's really far from becoming reality. So our bet here is that with safer energy forms, safer ways of delivering this therapy, we can optimize the workflow in the hospitals. We can avoid repeat procedures to a minimum, and we can then overall bring a lot of value to all players in this segment. When I think of Arga, and when we created Arga, we were looking for simplicity, right? Why do I say that? I mean, PFA is out there. A few companies have approval already, and it's growing in adoption massively. However, when we look at these devices that have been approved, from our internal Arga concept, we found them to be extremely complex, that while solving the problem is not solving all the problems. One problem is to treat the patient. One whole problem is also to be sustainable. With 38 million people out there, you cannot just keep putting out more and more expensive technology if somebody eventually has to pay for it. So we looked at simplicity, so we decided to create a sine wave generator that gives us the flexibility of titration for depth, which is very important when you consider the heart as a whole and not only treating AF. But we also created a catheter that's pretty unique in its design. It's as simple as it can get. in a sense that it's a multi-electrode, eight electrode catheter that out of the box is in a circular configuration. We can do isolation of all the pulmonary veins, which is the first step of any procedure. However, this is where we differentiate. Other companies, if they have to do other sets of lesions, they have to bring a second catheter in, or a second catheter that is an NRF rather than PFA, begging the question, why are you using two different energy sources if one is better than the other? Our catheter, within 1 minute, without removing the catheter from the body, we can change a stylet and change its configuration. So now it goes from a circular into a linear catheter. And in that linear configuration, I can deliver lines instead of dots. And I can deliver, if needed, for a touch-up base, a focal ablation, a dot. So the combination of generator plus the catheter will be really, really a strong value creator at all levels of healthcare, not only for the benefit of the patient, but for the benefit of the profitability of the hospitals, but at the same time, saving money for the healthcare system, allowing for more patients to be treated under the same budget. So Argá Medtech started in Switzerland. I partnered with a former colleague of mine that has serial entrepreneur already in the field of EP, electrophysiology. We currently have offices in Switzerland. We have labs in San Diego. And our current stage is we are finishing our first in-human or feasibility study. We've treated to date 75 patients very successfully. Presented this data at HRS last year. It got a lot of attraction from investors, right? And right now we're preparing to submit for an IDE and do our big pivotal study to take this product to market. Right now where we stand is within our IDE submission, we will be enrolling patients in both sides of the pond, right? Europe and the US, and we're going to use that data for concomitant submissions. We strongly believe that in 2 years we could be ready to submit all this data and go for commercialization. The US is by far the largest market, and it's where we plan to, let's say, put the biggest efforts. But as we've decided that right now we'll go for both at the same time by enrolling in both continents. Well, when we talk about milestones, obviously filing for an IDE is very important, filing for a CE mark, getting those studies ready. Those are also important. But what we look as well with the technology that we've created is to branch it out into other areas. We've spoken about atrial fibrillation, 38 million, but there are other arrhythmias that can be treated with this. And one of the most significant one is ventricular tachycardias, which are a lower number, probably 100,000 per year performed, but they are life-threatening, right? And we have the technology now with the use of our sine wave technology that no other PFA company has that can actually deliver the depths that we would need to treat in the ventricle. So that's a future milestone that we're working on. We're putting a lot of time and effort to develop these new waveforms for that application. So I used to run for one of the big companies, the area for atrial AF solutions, it was called, in Medtronic. I helped launch the cryoballoon. I helped launch what was Ablation Frontiers. My co-founder, Randy Werniff, was one of the founders of Ablation Frontiers. So I was helping him on another project in Europe, unrelated to this area. We looked into the PFA arena and we said, good, we have the technology to build that. We can assemble a team of engineers very fast and develop the sine wave to produce this. And that was in mid-2020. With that idea on a napkin, a very, very rough prototype of a generator, no catheter, we were able to raise 10 million euro from investors, which then led us to where we are today. With those 10 million, we got to first in human in just 20 months, proved the concept, and since then we've raised another 55 million now to do the IDE and continue on this journey. Yeah, I'd say sometimes stars align, a coincidence of getting together after 12 years, having an idea of a discussion and getting it together, and it's worked out pretty well for us. When I look back and when I speak to our investors, our board, I think we've been able to assemble a great team. I have a background more in business. I'm not an engineer. Got a degree in business and in pharmacology. But my co-founder is a serial entrepreneur engineer, right? So we have a beautiful split of responsibilities in the company as we run it. And we make sure that when we're hiring people that complement our own strengths, right? And not that overimpose. So that allowed us to, in 90 days from getting the first fund, to have a team of already 10 engineers onboarded. It allowed us to, in 20 months, be treating the first patient already. I have a background in this field. I used to manage, as I said, commercial activities for several of these devices. Had managed as well in prior lives, clinical departments or so. So all those things coming together with somebody that's a very experienced entrepreneur on the engineering side, it makes it a great combination. Right now, we've just brought a third person in, Steve McQuillan, which is our chief clinical and regulatory officers, that now will be in charge of the next phase that we move into, which is clinical, which is a totally new beast for the company in these first 3 years. 2025 is going to be a very critical year for us. It's the year we will kick off our pivotal study, and at the same time then continue to work the engineering and developing other applications. The pivotal study is a massive effort. It's quite a sizable study, over 400 patients, right, that we plan to enroll in 6 to 9 months. So the pre-work that needs to go in the first 6 months of the year is simply massive, and we're staffing the company to be able to deal with all of that. What we look for at Arga is not only create an application that's for AFib, very important, but it's an application and a platform that can be used for any arrhythmia in the heart, and eventually even branch out for other areas of PFA. We're focused on AF right now because that's the biggest market, the biggest opportunity, but we've made sure to put in place a platform that is flexible enough to do a multitude of different treatments within medicine as well. So we have the VT lined up next, and we have other ideas to go forward in the very near future.